guys, good morning. I hope you're doing amazing today. So thank you for getting on my channel and watching this video. So before I told you a little bit about my project Lupita Inspires and the book that I'm working on, Lupita and the Magic of Mexico. So I do have my website set up, and if you'd like to check that out, it's www.lupitainspires.com. But today I want to talk to you about why I'm even writing this, why I felt the need to put this children's story out there. And in order to do that, I have to tell you a little bit more about my personal journey here in America. And that's with giving you my story about my experience as being a dreamer in the United States and a DACA recipient. So before I started this journey of writing this book and public speaking, I was just a little girl born in Mexico. And I remember that my family, we loved being in Mexico. That's where I was born. That's where my family is from. But my parents talked about coming to America so that their children, me included, would have a better chance at a better education, really, and a chance at the American dream that everyone always talked about. So after much, I guess, talking and all of that, they decided to venture off to the United States and take that journey to giving us a better education, to bettering their career paths as well. So at the age of 2 years old, I was brought over here to the United States. And, I have so many memories of when we first got here. Some are really happy memories. Some are a little bit sad, but all throughout these memories, I have the same thankfulness. And I just feel so grateful to have the opportunity. So one of the memories that I have is my dad would leave in the morning very early before the sun really came up. When I'd be awake, he'd be gone to work. And then he would come back late in the evening, probably about 8:30, 9 p.m. So we didn't really see him much throughout the day. We stayed home with my mother. And of course, there was 5 of us. So her hands were literally full with all of us. She's a very strong woman, And one of the memories I have of her in particular when we first arrived was she went out to the mailbox to get the mail, and she came back inside. And when she came inside, she started crying, and I didn't understand why she was crying. I thought, she just went to get the mail. What's the big deal? But she went inside one of the rooms, and she sat on the small bed and just started to really tear up and started crying a little loud at that time. So I went up to her and I'm like, Mommy, ¿qué pasa? What's wrong? And she's like, nada, mija, nothing. And, I looked at the letter and I realized that it was from Mexico. I realized it was from our family. And you could tell it was from Mexico because it had the little Mexican flag stamp and all those different stamps on it in order for it to get here. So I remember that day when I saw her crying and holding that letter, that day I thought to myself, and I realized, you can't give up. Whatever it is that you do in this country, you can't give up on anything. And in that moment, I realized everything that they gave up so that we could have a better chance at the American dream. They left their families behind. They knew they probably weren't going to be able to go back. And it's been that way. 27 years since my mother has been able to see her mother. 27 years since I've been able to see my grandparents. So I share that with you because a lot of the time we see that DACA, dreamers, immigrants, we hear all these negative things about them on the news, about us. And we're not all that way. There are many of us, most of us, are here because we want to follow the American dream. We want to be a part of this society. We want to do better. We want to encourage others around us. That's why we're here. So just having that memory, I will always be grateful for the sacrifice that was made in order for us to be here in this country. And growing up, I loved going to school. My mother, I was telling you how strong she was. I remember her talking to the teachers at the best that she could with her broken English and telling them that I needed to be in an all-English classroom. And they're like, ma'am, why is she going to be in an all-English classroom? She only speaks Spanish. And my mom did the best that she could and told them that, no, you have to put her in an all-English class. So, of course, she won that debate, and I was put in an all-English classroom. So it was really interesting because at first, it was totally confusing to me. I remember my teacher's name was something along the lines of Mrs. Lemon. So I talked to her the best that I could, but it ended up that by the end of my kindergarten year, I was fluent in both English and Spanish. So that was just amazing, you know, and it was really wonderful because at that point, I was able to translate for my parents. You have to understand that for some people that are a little bit older, it's harder for them to really grasp the language. They can understand it, but when they're speaking it, it's very hard to really know exactly what's going on. So I started translating at a very young age. Whenever we'd go to meetings with the teachers, I was there translating. Whenever we'd go to the doctor, I was there translating. And, you know, some people have told me that that was a disadvantage for me, that I wasn't able to be much of a child. But, you know, I'm grateful for that experience because it allowed me to grow up and to mature at a young age so that I could see what was really going on. You know, and all our family wanted was to live a better life here in America. But I would still hear on the news that not all immigrants were welcome. So it was really confusing to me because there were so many people that really loved us. And one of the things that I will always remember is when I was still young and we had first gotten to America, there was this church that my father would volunteer with. And he would volunteer and they would give us food. They would give us, you know, dried goods, cereal, etc., all of these things because we had just gotten here. So we needed assistance and the church helped us. And for me, it was so wonderful because I'm like, these people don't know us. They don't know us at all, but yet they're willing to help. I knew there had to be good in the world if that could happen. And not just that, you guys. One time they sent a lady to come to our house from the church, and she told us to write down a couple of things that we wanted for Christmas and that the church was going to provide it to us. So I thought of two things. I put a doll and I put a watch on there. I don't know why a watch because I'm usually late to most things anyways, but I wanted a watch at the time. So anyways, I put that down on my list and my brothers and my sister did the same thing. And in that moment, I was so grateful already just to know that someone came into our home and was trying to make us feel welcome in this country. So Christmas came and sure enough, the doll was there and the watch was there. And I know those are such small things. I get that. But it touched me so deeply and so intensely. And I think that is why I volunteer so much. A lot of the time my family would joke like, Carolina, why don't you just work more? Why are you always volunteering for these different organizations? Why do you do that? And guys, it's because of those experiences, of those people that were so kind-hearted and that opened their doors to us. It means so much to me. So for me, all the volunteer work that I do is always based off of that. And so anyways, I continued going to school and of course I loved it. And when I was about in the 4th or 5th grade, they had a project where we had to write a book, and I loved it. I loved the process. So I think I wrote my first book then, and they give you a hardcover book. You draw on it, you write on it, all of that. And it was called Turtle Money. And it was about this little girl trying to get a turtle, but she had to save up enough money in order to do that. So it talks about her whole little journey in doing that when she finally gets her turtle. So apparently I did a pretty okay job because I got some kind of certificate and award for it in my whole class, like the whole class, or I'm sorry, the whole grade. So they put me on the TV for the school. They had a TV system for the school, so the whole school got to hear my story, and I just thought that was so amazing. But then life happened, and I sort of pushed that out of the way, and I started focusing more on my studies and everything else, and the passion for writing books just kind of left me. So that's another reason why I'm doing this channel, because I think that we need to focus more on our gifts and our talents that are innately in us as kids. And I think that if we focus more on that, we give the child the ability to see what they're great at, what they're fantastic at, and we encourage them to do more of it, because that is their gift. So that's part of the reason why I also wanted to do the channel. But anyway, once I was out of elementary school and middle school, of course I went to high school. And in high school, the immigration thing was more apparent. Because everyone's talking about college, and they're talking about driving and all these wonderful things that just kind of come to everybody because they're citizens, you know, and it's wonderful. But at that time, that wasn't something that I could participate in. I wasn't able to drive. I wasn't able to do those things because I couldn't legally do it. And of course, I was always preparing myself I wanted to have the absolute cleanest record, so that way whenever something came, whenever the DREAM Act came or something, I would be ready and I would be prepared. So of course, I always kind of walked down the straight and narrow. But anyways, back in 2006, there was a huge walkout. Millions and millions of students walked out in protest for immigration reform. And look, we're still going through this. We're still going through seeking immigration reform because it's still not here. So I remember walking out of school that day and holding up my sign, and I was with my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband. It's crazy, I know, but we're married now, and we were protesting, and it was for a few days. And I remember just so many of us going out on the streets and just being really passionate about what we believed in. And it reminds me a lot about what's going on now, because the immigration reform is still, there's still nothing. There is still no pathway to citizenship for people that are here and that want to better themselves. So I will always continue fighting for that. Just because my situation has worked out doesn't mean everyone else's has, because it hasn't. So anyway, after the protest, after high school, all of that, I was thinking to myself, I said, okay, well, what the heck am I going to do? I'm like, I can go to college, probably not like I would like to, but I can still go. I'm like, I can still go. And I decided, I'm like, well, getting a job is going to be tough. So even if I have to volunteer, I'll do that, you know. And I did. I volunteered tremendously. I volunteered a lot. And the reason I did that was because first, I needed the experience. Second of all, why not? I believed in so many causes of these different organizations, so I absolutely had to volunteer and had to help. So for me, it was just natural. It was just natural for me. And I would just remember those stories as a little girl, and I had to give back one way or another, even if it wasn't to the same community or the same people, but I had to give back in one way. So I actually helped and restarted an organization on ECU campus here in North Carolina called My Voice. So with that, we raised up enough funds to give back to the Violence Against Women Prevention Center in Greenville. So we were able to give them funds to help with this project, which was wonderful. And apparently we did a great job, because they invited us to the feminist convention at Washington, D.C. So of course I went to that, and it was incredibly exciting. It was incredibly exciting because you get to meet so many wonderful people that are still fighting for equality and justice. And for me, that was important. And I needed to learn more. I needed to learn more about what was going on, how I could help, what my role would be in it. Because sometimes we want to do good, but we don't know where to start. So for me, I'm like, well, I'm just going to get involved with anything that I can, learn as much as I can, and go from there. That's always how I operate. I operate by experiencing. So I did that. I helped with that organization. And then later, something wonderful happened. DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So of course I applied for that, and I was very fortunate to get that. Once I did receive it, of course you go through your criminal background check, etc., etc. once you qualify, you can go to school, a lot of them in-state rates, and you can drive legally, you can work legally, you can do all sorts of stuff. It's really wonderful, obviously. And I did, and I got the opportunity to go to law school, and I went there for a year. I had to experience that as well, and I realized that that wasn't what was for me, but I had to experience it in order to find that out, which I was okay with. And while I was in law school, I was working for one of the senators here in Wake County, and it was a great experience as well because I needed to learn more. I needed to learn more about the political realm, see how everything operated, see if that was something that I would fit into, if that was a good avenue for me or not. And during the time that I was there, I also got the opportunity to apply for, permanent status. And of course I took that opportunity, but then the catch was that I had to leave the country. And, I've been here for 27 years now. I've never left. So thinking about going back to Mexico was actually very scary for me because you don't go to any parts that you want to go to. You go to Ciudad Juarez, the border town. And I'll tell you, when I went, it was an incredible experience. It was an incredible experience. I ended up living in a hotel for about a month and a half. And during that time, I had to go to 3 interviews. The first interview is very simple. You just go and you get fingerprinted. And you get fingerprinted plenty in the States, so it's not a big deal. So that's your first interview. The second interview that you go to is a medical exam. And in this medical exam, it's very extensive. And it's actually in a very nice hospital. It's a very nice hospital. It's cleaner than a lot of the ones I've seen here in the States. But it's still a little bit strange. So one of the rooms, they're separate rooms. And in one of the rooms, there were about 5 desks next to each other. And what you do is you put your arm out on the desk and they come around to each person and they take the blood out. They just take your blood out. And for me, it just kind of felt like we were little animals just kind of lined up there and one right after the other. It was a very awkward feeling for me, but you had to do it, right? You had to. So then after that, they take you into a different room and they give you a few shots. So I think I got 2 on my right and 3 on my left. And I don't really know what they're for. And I always joke with family. I'm like, guys, if I get side effects, I guess we'll find out in a few years, but for now I'm fine. I'm totally fine. And so you go through that, you go through the medical interview. And then the third interview, that interview is something that, it's an experience that messes with you. It's an experience that really messes with you because I'll paint the picture of how it was. So you're in this huge gymnasium. It's absolutely huge. And there's row after row after row of people. And to the right of you, to the left, in front and behind of you are people that are there for the same reason that you're there for. And when that interview is over, you'll find out if you get to come back home to the States or not, or if you're going to have to stay in Mexico. So you can imagine how nervous I was and how nervous everyone else was in that room. And during the time that you're waiting, you're talking to the people next to you and you're kind of trying to give some encouragement, give some positivity, because you all have different cases. They're all slightly different, and the slightest difference will make a difference when they determine if you're going to come home or if you're not. So we did that. We talked to one another and tried to encourage one another along the way. But then they called my row. I was row 30, and they say, row 30. So then you go, they walk you around to a different part of the building. And if you've ever been to the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, you know what I'm talking about. There is, it's DMV style. There's a window, and the officer's right behind the window, and then there's a speaker box there for you. So that's one of the differences. There's a speaker box there, so you can hear the questions that people are being asked. You can hear their answers, obviously, and then at the end, you hear if they are approved or if they're denied. So I remember a couple of feet in front of me, there was this gentleman, and he was telling us about the 3 kids that he had back home. He told us his wife was back home, and he said that he thought his case was pretty strong because everyone was there and they depended on him financially. That's all that I knew about the case. I didn't know anything else but that. But I heard a few of the questions that were asked to him. And then once they were completed with the questions, I heard in the speaker box, they said that he was denied. And you guys, when he was denied, he automatically and obviously started crying. And I couldn't help but do the same for him. You know, I didn't know him. I didn't know anything about him except that his family was back home, and I didn't know anything about his case. But I could feel for him, because when you see this happen in front of you, that's when all of this legality and all these things that people protest for, that's when it comes true. That's when you see it in front of you. And it does mess with you, because you're thinking, what is the difference between him and everyone else? What is the difference? Why is he not allowed to come back home? So I cried too. For those of you that know me, when things like that happen, it affects me. It does. And I tried to hide my face though, so he wouldn't know that I was crying because of what happened to him. So then I'm standing there and I'm already shaken up because of what happened to this guy. And then it's my turn to get asked the questions. So my body's shaking. I'm just kind of like this. I'm like shaking. And I go up to the speaker box, and I see the officer in front of me. She starts asking me question after question. And I try to answer the best that I can. But I'm nervous because I'm like, if I get something wrong, like I can't say, hey, can I try again? I forgot. Like, it doesn't work that way. So I tried to stay as calm as possible, which apparently wasn't very calm. But anyways, the next thing I hear was her say, blah, 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 you're approved, blah, 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 blah. And I froze. And this is what I said to her. I said, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I don't want to annoy you, but did you just say that I was approved? And she says, you're approved. Like, she didn't care. But for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm approved. So there were so many emotions coming at the time. I felt relieved. I felt grateful. I felt just so much joy. But then behind all of that, I felt so much guilt. You know, I felt so much guilt. Because, you know, what's the difference? What's the difference between me and the guy that got denied? What is the difference? There might have been minor differences in our cases, and that's what determined the end result. So all I could think about was the people back in the room that weren't going to get approved. Not everyone gets approved. And it's crazy because once you find out if you're approved or denied, you go out the same way. And when you go outside, everyone's family's there, of the people that are in the building applying for this. So you go out there and you see mixed emotions. You see some people, you know, happy, crying because they're happy. You see other people crying because they're sad and their loved one won't come home. So I go out there and I'm crying too because I'm grateful. But I feel guilty for all the other people. And I go out there, my husband's looking at me and he's like, what happened? Like, he's looking nervous because I'm crying and I can't really talk at the moment. And I tell him, I said, we're approved. And his face was so relieved and he looked so happy. I think he was happier that day than the day we got married. So I felt so thankful. I felt so thankful. But that day when I went back to the hotel, I thought about everything. I thought about everything, and I thought about all the people that weren't going to get to go home that day. I thought about all of that, and it pushed me. It pushed me to be more honest with myself, to be more honest with other people, to fight for what I think is right. And I still believe immigration reform is very much needed. It is very much needed because the way it's set up right now, it's set up to divide families. It's set up on premises that don't make sense. It's unjust right now. So there's so many things that need to be changed because of it. And I think that sharing our stories are important. I think that even though they're sad and I'm crying right now, and I cry every time that I tell it, it's like, I think I'll get over it at some point, but until then, you'll just have to see this all the time. But our stories are powerful. Our stories will help others understand that we are people, we are human beings. You know, we have families. We want to advance. We want to help others. We want to inspire others. That is what we want. And if we share our stories, I think that it's a better way for them, for the other people that maybe don't see us that way, for them to understand, for them to know that we want the same things that they want, and we want America to be great. We really do. Or else, why would we be here? You know, why would I be here if I didn't? So that is why I'm working on this story, and that is why I share my personal story, because there are so many people that are still in that situation. Actually, just a few weeks ago, I went to a local high school, and they invited me to talk about my Dreamer DACA story. And I talked to them about it, and there are still students there that, for whatever reason, did not qualify for DACA. They did not qualify for DACA, and they've been here since they were young. So I don't know. I don't know the specifics of their cases. Of course, I work with different organizations, so I got them in contact with the people that may be able to help them. So that's great, and I'm hoping that that works out. But I'm just shocked that we're still in the same position as we were years and years ago. It's not, there has been no solution. But I believe there can be a solution. And I believe that it starts with people seeing who we really are. You know, who are these immigrants that come to this country? Who are they? What are they trying to do? Who do they know? Like, you know, if they know us, if they understand the good that we're trying to do, how can they deny us anything? You know, how can they? So this is my journey. And I know a lot of people will enjoy the story, and I know a lot of people will absolutely despise the story. And that's okay. I expect to get mixed results from a lot of people. And all I can do is speak my truth and speak my story. And I hope that other people will share theirs too, because I think that's a great way to unite our communities. As different as we may be, we've got so many similarities. We've got more similarities than we do differences. And I want to work on uniting our communities, not dividing. So I want to thank you again for listening to my extremely long story. I know this was very long, and it could have been longer. I cut off some parts because I don't want to keep you here for forever. But I do appreciate you listening to what it is that I have to say. I hope that this story helps you in whatever it is that you may be doing, or whatever it is that you may be facing right now. I know sometimes things seem very unfair, and they seem like something is against us. But I'll tell you something, there is an experience to learn in everything that we go through. Everything. You just have to be able to open your heart and open your mind and see that. See what it is that the universe wants you to learn from this. So thank you for listening to this story. I truly appreciate all of you. I am always here with an open heart, a peaceful heart, and I wish you the absolute best. Bye-bye.